Welcome, I'm Leanna, and I'm a completionist at heart. But along my journey completing games, there were some that proved just too much. This is a list of the top 10 games that got the best of me. There's many I could have chosen for this list, however, these are the ones that stuck with me more than most. And what could be more fitting than starting the list off with Bloodborne, the one that got away. Now this is a game I do completely and wholeheartedly guarantee I will return to. Maybe even on the Let's Play channel someday. By the way, go check that out if you haven't already. I'd completed just about everything there is to complete in this game near launch. Multiple times, including the old Hunters DLC, and I even played through it once on stream around 6 or 7 years ago. I also played through with my brother once, about a year ago. However, what truly got the best of me was the Chalice dungeons. It's not that I couldn't do them, but on my first run through I was doing them on, I just could not seem to get to the final Themerium Labyrinth to fight the Blood Queen. Maybe I was doing something wrong, but I tried doing every Chalice dungeon, I tried codes online, and nothing was working. At some point along the line I reset my save by mistake, and had to do it all over again. Next time I tried, I also couldn't get the dungeon to spawn. And I'll note here that I did every challenge dungeon up to that point that I possibly could. Recently with my brother I started going through them again, but when he stopped playing the game, so did I. So as of this moment, this game has still bested me. But wait, future Leanna here. While recording footage for this video, I gave the codes one more shot, and what do you know? It worked. It finally worked. So soon enough, I will more than likely have my long-awaited platinum in Bloodborne. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. A test of patience. As a huge fan of the Crash Bandicoot series, I was brought up with the franchise, literally. When this game was released, I was barely able to control myself. I've completed everything there is to complete in every mainline Crash game in the past. When I was a child, and even a couple years before the remakes of the Insane trilogy released. Once the remakes had released, I even got the Platinum trophies for all of them. But this game is truly something else. And as a result, I'm still yet to complete it. I've made 2 serious attempts with the PS4 version, 1 serious attempt with the PS5 version, and kind of a half-assed attempt at the PC version to truly 100% this game. But at this moment, I just can't manage it. There's just too much grueling work required. If you've played this game yourself, you'll know exactly what I mean. But for those that haven't, the rundown is essentially get all 6 gems in each level, twice due to the inverted mode, which has you play the same level, but flipped and with unique box and gem locations. Then, you'll want to go through every single level, aside bosses, again to collect every box without dying once, to achieve the insanely perfect relic for that level. These are just painful to achieve, especially on later levels. Finally, the time trial relics. Arguably the toughest trial relics of any Crash game yet, requiring absolute near perfection, utilizing the new triple spin ability to boost your speed rhythmically. This is probably the hardest part for me personally, due to the RSI in my hands. I do hope to complete the game one day in the future, but for now, I'll have to admit defeat and accept that this game truly got the best of me. Crash Team Racing, nitro-fueled. A racer's dream and nightmare. Much like with Crash 4, this game just wanted a little too much for me. I made a really solid attempt at completing this one. And with all honesty, I'm happy to say that I'm pretty close. Really, at this point, I just need to defeat the second run of the final boss once again, but this time on hard difficulty, and beating at least nitrous oxide's times on the time trials of every track. Beating Nitrus's times is a real challenge, and unfortunately, one I'm not quite ready for. There's still work to do to improve and become a true Drift Queen. Fallout New Vegas. The Courier's last hope. Early last year, 2023, dating this video, I took it upon myself to 100% and platinum Fallout games from 3 to 4. This was incredibly challenging, but not for the reasons most would expect. It turned out that the PS3 versions of these games are so incredibly broken that as you progress through the game and your save file increases in size, the game slowly becomes less and less stable. Granted, this is mainly an issue with Fallout 3. However, it does still happen in New Vegas. The game's frame rate comes to a crawl. Physics go out of control. The world unloads in front of your eyes. Characters shoot into the sky like a rocket leaving to Mars. And it periodically and seemingly randomly crashes. By the time you get to the DLC content of the game is near impossible to play. But with perseverance, starting the game over again from the start, and being incredibly careful with items you pick up, it is achievable. I did manage to complete and platinum Fallout 3 for the PlayStation 3 and Fallout 4 for the PlayStation 4. What I could not achieve is the platinum for Fallout New Vegas. I don't know if it was the mindset I was in at the time, but I legitimately feel I got further in this game when the game first launched on the PlayStation 3 than I did this last year. It just felt like the game was asking too much from me. But to be fair, I also could have been burned out from completing 2 Fallout games in a row alongside this one. For those reasons, for the time being, it has gotten the best of me. Neo, a samurai's demise. I have attempted to play this game multiple times at this point. I started out on PC around 2 to 3 years ago, and got a decent way through after spending around 10 hours or so playing. Then I happened to get distracted by some new releases at the time, and didn't really return to the game until last year, where my goal was to go for the Platinum Trophy on PlayStation, which didn't go so well. I gave it a solid shot, but this time around I couldn't seem to get further than the first island after spending 5 hours in the game. Eventually, I just decided to give up. I do want to return to this game in the future, however, it seems way harder than any Souls game that I've played before, and at least at the time of playing, was maybe just slightly above my skill level. I've heard from others online that this game does have a lot of jank to it, and it can take a fair bit of work to get into. But apparently the game does ease up slightly as you get further into the game, and your character becomes more powerful. I do like what I've played so far, and definitely want to return. But for me personally, it was just a little bit too infuriating to play through. And for those reasons, for the time being, this game has bested me. Sekiro, Shadows Died Twice. Journey of the Samurai. When this game first launched, I booted it up and played it on stream. Or at least I tried to. I'd purchased it on PC, but unfortunately a combination of my PC being outdated at the time, and the game having performance issues overall in the PC version back then, I was unable to get past the first area. A few days later, I gave in, and bought it physically to play on the Xbox One X. While playing, I struggled probably the most out of any From Software game I'd played prior, to once again even get past the opening area of the game. After a lot of trial and error, pain and suffering, I actually managed to get a decent way through the game, defeated the Phantom Lady Butterfly, Genichiro Ashina, and pretty much got as far as the Guardian Ape. I did manage to defeat the ape after a lot of attempts, but soon after I just stopped playing. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was that made me stop playing, but with progression feeling slower as it takes more skill and precision to master the combat in this game than prior From Software games, that could have led to me putting the game down. Sekiro, I will return, but for now, you've bested me. Far Cry 6. Not so paradise. The Far Cry series has been a staple for open world games done right. Or at least it was when Far Cry 3 to 4 were around. Soon after, they started to become stale and just a bit too samey. And what did Ubisoft do to spice things up over time? Absolutely nothing. I have loved this franchise since Far Cry 2, but since Far Cry 5, I've strongly fallen out of love with the franchise. Far Cry 5 just didn't live up to what I personally wanted in a Far Cry game. It was too slow-paced, with too much to do, and the story was about as compelling as a wet fart. I wanted more of the crazy villains from Far Cry 3 to 4, but instead we got a guy with an ego problem, and enemies that were more of a bullet sponge than the enemies in Destiny. And might I add, where on earth is all the wildlife? Far Cry 6 seemed on the surface to be much more. More focus on combat, guerrilla operations, and we can't forget the inclusion of Giancarlo Esposito, or as many of you may know him as, Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. Quite honestly, it's a shame, but he is the only thing that made this game worth playing for me in the end. The game still just didn't do anything to revitalize the series, and if anything it felt like more of a slog than Far Cry 5 even did. I managed to complete the game after pushing myself to. I even went through and completed all of the available DLC for the game. But I wasn't able to achieve 100% in the game or any of the DLC. Even some of the achievements just refused to unlock. But what's held me back, primarily, are the insurgency missions. These missions give you specific objectives around the map to do every day for a week. If you miss a day, it ruins your chance of getting the achievement. I put a lot of focus into trying to do this, but with my schedule being the way it is, I would quite often miss a day and have to start again. You have to do these every single day. And even still, sometimes it just doesn't unlock for people. As well as that, some of the collectible hunting and just overall side missions, and especially co-op achievements, I just didn't find to be fun or enjoyable, unlike the previous games. So at this point, I've just kind of given up on the game. I do intend to return in the future, but maybe when I'm a little less burnt out. For now, this game's got the best of me. Kingdom Hearts 2. You are not alone. Kingdom Hearts 2 is a game pure in heart, soul, and identity, with a clear message around depression and friendship. With a story that's convoluted and confusing for many, it's clear that one of the staples is fun first, and the friends you make along the way make the journey. I've been a fan of this series since the PS2 days, and I mean, who wouldn't be? Final Fantasy with a mashup of Disney worlds and characters? Who'd have thought that would work? Well, surprisingly, it does. I've given a solid go of completing most of the Kingdom Hearts series included in the 1.5 and 2.5 remix collections, but I never gave it too much of a focus, as mostly I just wanted to enjoy my time with them. That is, until the day I wanted to finally sit down and 100% complete the first and second game, ready for when the third game was soon to release. I managed to 100% and platinum Kingdom Hearts 1 on the PlayStation 4, but when it came to Kingdom Hearts 2, it was just a little too much for me at the time. The gummy ship missions were fun at first, but soon turned into one of the most boring grinds I've ever experienced. So I gave up on them, and the idea of getting every item along each gummy ship path. Then there's the data battles, in which you have to defeat every boss in the game, but this time it's much harder, to the point that they might just be the hardest thing to do in the whole of Kingdom Hearts. at least that I've played thus far. I actually managed to beat most of these data battles, on proud difficulty too, which was quite surprising, but I still have 2 left to do, and no matter how many times I've tried them, they're just above my skill level, which leaves me stuck with the silver crown on my character, and that gold crown just slightly out of reach. I will return to this game in the future to give it one last try, but for now, it'll sit on the shelf collecting dust, and I have to admit, it's bested me. The Evil Within. A tortured conscience. The Evil Within quite honestly blew me away back when it released. It was the only game in a long time to truly scratch that itch that Resident Evil 4 left for some time. Yeah, the game has a lot of jank here and there, not to mention the state it launched in, but it's an incredibly enjoyable and thrilling horror game that does share a lot in terms of atmosphere with Resident Evil 4, and for good reason. The same director that directed Resident Evil 4 directed this game. I must have played through this game easily 5 times by this point, maybe more. I started out with the Xbox One version, moved to PC, then to PS4, and back to PC. It wasn't until the most recent playthroughs on PC and PS4 within the last year that I really attempted to go for 100%. And well, it's a tough one. In order to attain 100% in this game, there's a lot that needs doing. But for the most part, with some trial and error, it's not too bad. It just takes a bit of time, even when playing on the hardest difficulty or collecting collectibles. But with the inclusion of the Akumu difficulty mode, requiring the player to complete the game without being hit even once, not even a single point of damage, a single pixel of your beautiful body touched by a weapon of any kind, with enemies showing up earlier than they do in prior difficulties, ammo being less common than it already is, and the green gel drop rate being reduced, makes this so insanely difficult that I just did not have the willpower within me to push through to completion. What makes this worse is that 2 of the 3 DLCs have their very own difficulty mode that plants you in pitch black darkness for your playthrough of them, allowing you to use only your flashlight. This isn't too bad, but it can get very disorienting. As well as that, there's also a DLC where you get to play as the executioner that you meet throughout the game, and wreak total havoc on the enemies that gave you trouble earlier. But even playing with a guide, I always seem to miss a key for the lockers, or a map fragment for the map. For me personally, as much as I'd like to achieve true 100% in this game, it just doesn't feel worth my time. Maybe someday, but for now, it'll live on the shelf with the rest of my failures. The Evil Within 2. A Conscience Redeemed. The Evil Within 2 mostly did what the first game did well, but much better in near every aspect, in my opinion. However, the addition of a semi-open world, while added to the experience in some ways, also took away from it in others. The ability to pick and choose where you go at what time, go ahead with the story, or take a break to do some interesting side missions, was a fantastic addition, allowing you to play at your own pace. Thankfully, the majority of the side missions were entertaining, with some unique set pieces and story elements that you'd miss out on completely if you chose just to go ahead with the story. That is unfortunately one of the downsides to this approach. There's a few side missions that I enjoyed, but others that I know that have played this game never experienced them and missed out. The new crafting and green gel upgrade systems are a great touch, providing far more upgrades, abilities, and customization to the player. One downside to the new system is if you're not using a crafting bench because you need to craft ammo in the midst of a battle, you're going to be using a lot of precious resources to craft singular bullets. While if you'd waited until you were at a crafting bench, you could craft the same items for less resources. Much like the previous game, this one is difficult for all the same reasons. It also contains an Akumu difficulty mode, albeit slightly easier than the first game, but still pretty tough. The added difficulty brought on from the new crafting system could make this arguably more difficult for some, while others would say the first game's approach was more difficult. For the same reasons as the first game, I'd love to return to this, but for now, it's been shelved. I will say though that the Evil Within series has slowly become one of my favorites of all time, and I hope in the future we can welcome an Evil Within 3 to the gaming world. And that's everything for this list. If you enjoyed this list, please remember to like and subscribe. Destroy that subscribe button. It helps a ton. I worked really hard on this one, so your support means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.